back to my mama all of my appreciation.
On the track, what up? Indigenous cats and MC Wicks on the track. Armored and they raised no fool, raised in the ghetto. Surrounded by the savages, killers, and all the rebels. In the streets, this grim represent devils. I avoided the trouble scribbled in rhyme bush, cause ain't no such thing as halfway crushed. I'm an MC, the poetry is my destiny. Mama never hated the dreams, she want the best for me. Thank God for her presence, kept me out the penitentiary. I'm just repping my family and my bloodline. I'm just building my legacy with a dope rhyme. I remember growing up.
I'm hoping I didn't start too early.
EBT got us covered, so we all
On
fine in the
YouTube,
hood, eating good, but my clothes
I might have to go and edit this out. I didn't realize how much time was left.
Cause people dying left and right, it's outrageous. Gonna move my mom out the ghetto the day I make it.
All right, welcome in, everybody. Let's get started. Jane, great to see you. Yeah, I figured that you would be there, and that's one of the reasons why I didn't get started right at 2, because Anarch was still streaming at 2 when I planned to go live, and I was like, well, I know that Jane's not going to be there. So, but I was also checking out. I didn't really catch the last bit of what they were talking about because I was getting up ready for stream here, but it was good. It seemed like it was a very productive conversation. I'm always a big fan of what Anarch has to say. Tenekoe, welcome in, Kiyamatara. I was so hoping that you were going to be here today. Good to see you. I hope you're doing well. I might need your help trying to unpack freedom a little bit more, liberty a little bit more. Was really a large focus in Wednesday's stream, and I think that I did a not terrible job, but I don't think that I did a complete job, and I believe that your insight and perspective would probably be helpful in trying to figure out the distinction specifically is how it is the case that liberty or freedom, however you want to use those, synonymous, right? Because I use those synonymously. That liberty doesn't exist in the citadel of the mind. It doesn't exist in my mind. This is imaginary. Where freedom exists is in the world of others. The way that philosophers have historically conceived of freedom is this is free. When I enter the world of others, I am inhibited by those others. And this is a mistake, right? This is where freedom actually is. Anything that you believe that you have here is purely fantasy, right? Well, and that's probably a more articulate way than I explained it on Wednesday too. Welcome in, Dark Ray Otter. Good to see you. Good. Absolutely. Good. Because you had a Dark Ray Otter, you had so many great things to input on last stream. Jane, maintaining the most of what I've put on the notes, which we're going to be talking about today, has come almost word for word, exactly what Jane has put in chat. So we are all working together to make some quality content here. So thank you all for showing up and being here and helping me out, because you're all rock stars. I'm trying to get the document pulled up. I don't want to spend a lot of time. Well, hold on. That's not what I wanted to say. That's not how I wanted to start that sentence. Today, the plan for today, if I could give a synopsis, is I want to talk about some of the stuff that's on this outline. Excuse me. Allergies are a little bit bad today. There it is. Okay. We want to make some changes and reorient ourselves, I think, a bit today. That should get minimized. Oh, let me make sure that I don't have anything. Let's do this. Okay, that looks good. Windows is trying so hard to be helpful. I wish it would just stop. Just stop. Good. Okay. That's what I wanted to check. I mentioned on last stream that I had downloaded an internet bitrate monitor so that I could keep up with my connection speed and upload speed. The monitor that I downloaded doesn't turn off. It's on all the time and it stays over the top, right? I had to uninstall it. It was because there's no you can't do anything with it. You can't manipulate it, you can't change it, there are no features or functions. So I'll find something else. Here's a take. Marx would have absolutely laughed at the sight of Leninism. I mean, it's not really a hot take. I think that Marx would have absolutely laughed at the sight of Leninism, Lenin and Leninism. And good that you brought this up, because this is something that's kind of been bothering me too. Good. Let's go back to my face. We're going to come back to the document in just a minute. Well, in fact, let me scroll down to one of the things that I went and looked up. Is one of the things that I was frustrated about on last stream, or one of the things that I was talking about my difficulty in understanding, is why there were so many Marxist-Leninists who were, it seemed, from my perspective, just divorced completely from either Marxist ideology or Lenin's ideology. And the mistake that I'm making is that Marxist-Leninism isn't a combination of these two philosophies. It's Stalin's. It's that Marxist-Leninism is Stalin's authoritarian take, or not necessarily authoritarian, maybe, but necessarily militant. And that's an important distinction about Marxist-Leninism, that because I'm not one, right? I don't spend a lot of time in those circles. I don't spend a lot of time talking to those people. But that's it. It's not because it's right. The Marxist-Leninism isn't an amalgamation of Marxist theory and Lenin's ideas. That would probably be okay, but that's not what Marxist-Leninism is. It's Stalin's interpretation of how to implement this militarily. So that kind of clued in, gave me some perspective, and made the whole the whole situation make a little bit more sense. Hopefully that helps you all out too. But Marx would have, I think, been appalled. And for the reasons that I was frustrated about on Wednesday's stream, because it's according to Marxism and a dialectical understanding of power, it is a failed endeavor. Right? For the reasons that Marx was very clear about over and over again. You don't go to war with capitalism. That's the thing that we need to produce the means of production. And if we go to war with capitalism, it has all of the money and all of the resources. We will lose. That period, always, under every, and that will be always for all situations, right? All of our conceivable situations. Could we imagine a hypothetical universe in which it didn't work out quite that way? Sure. But I don't think that that's realistic at all. Oh, I'm topping out a little bit. I noticed, I watched some of last stream. I didn't have a lot of time today before stream to get prepared, so I watched a little bit. Hopefully my volume isn't too low. Is that still good? Everybody can still hear me. I'm still a good sound. Or did I turn myself too low? Because when I top out into the red, the sound really isn't good. And I get loud. I do that quite often. So I'm gonna make sure to turn my volume down a little bit from last stream. All right, so let's spend a little bit of time looking at the document. Excuse me, goodness. That was a much bigger burp than I was anticipating. I thought it was going to be a little itty-bitty one, and it wasn't. We need to also educate the masses on how to self-administrate, which LMs and authoritarian leftists don't do. I think that's a fantastic point, Jane. Not only do the theories fail to educate the masses, it fails to prepare people for the kinds of roles and tasks that they will have to do to actualize freedom. And this is the Malatesta problem. When you try to liberate people, some people are going to recognize you as doing harm to them. As you are working to loosen the fetters which bind them, they will mistake you for the enemy binding them. And it's for exactly that reason, Jane, that if people are not prepared to be responsible decision makers who are concerned about directing their efforts and energy to creating a fair and just world, if they're not prepared to do that, everyone's going to have a hard time, because people need to be responsible for revolution to work, for change to work, for us to make progress away from the capitalist project. People have to take the responsibility and do the work and know how to, right? And that's one of the things that we are doing an awful lot on this channel, because I would not profess to know. Anarch is the kind of person that you would appeal to who is a knower of how to do the things, right? Because they organize. They are actively engaged in organizing a whole project that is doing stuff. Right? So that's a knower who knows how to do the things. And we, or me anyway, am looking at other knowers who are doing the doing and trying to figure out where I can fit in the doing, right? And how do I take the next step in the next part of this responsibility that is mine as a builder of tomorrow. And I think that part of how this project ought to be directed is that it's a recognition that you all here in chat, and me and everybody, we are world builders. What we do today creates our material conditions tomorrow. Dialectics is really quite simple, right? That the historical materialism is an easy concept to get. We have the conditions today because of what we did yesterday. The situation you are in is a situation you created with your actions and your efforts and your directedness yesterday. You're not entirely in control of how your destiny plays out, right? Material conditions have a massive impact on that. So if you're struggling to pay rent, if you're struggling to pay your phone or internet bill, if you're struggling to put food on the table, those are ways that you are not free. And what our projects in general should be directed toward is trying to make people free, and not just we're going to say words and now democracy works in a different way. What we mean is we condition ourselves to be the kind of people to stand shoulder to shoulder with others in the world building of tomorrow. Yes, both individual and collective responsibility. And that's a very important aspect too, Jane. And it's what one of the things that last I heard Anarch was talking about is individualistic anarchists who will ideologically are incapable of understanding how to work together with others to build a better tomorrow, right? The ideology of an individualist anarchist is that we all need to go our own way and leave each other alone. And that is also a failed project, right? All of us going our own way is how capital wins. Like literally, that's the death of movement, of death of progress, death of revolution, death of everything, right? If we all just go our own way, that's it. Game over, man. Game over. There's a huge inertia of how things are. People don't like the changes, especially unpredictable ones. Yes. So there's that's what is this? I'm trying to think back to the term that's used in behavioral economics. It's the same principle as the devil you know kind of thing that leads to Stockholm syndrome. Right, and that's ultimately what you're talking about, Dark Gray Otter, is a kind of self-convincing where we convince ourselves that things will only be worse if we resist. Right, we might as well. Things aren't great, but maybe if we just put some more band-aids on this. Right, we just need some more social welfare programs. We need some more charities. We just need some, right, and that's not going to work. But you're absolutely right. And there is a kind of behavioral economics relationship there where people see certain kinds of risks and would rather keep the devil that they know rather than take the risk of loosing the devil entirely. Expanding a bit more on my analogy of the ghosts as commodity article. This time more focused on the laborer and how under capitalism, at least, they are treated just like the reaper. Here's a few notes from my draft. Here's a man that everyone meets, but he is lonely and everyone wants to avoid him. A while ago, my old account, before it glitched. Oh, I wrote an article called Ghosts Are Real, and you were holding one. I remember that. We went over that one on stream, right, where I argue the commodities are like ghosts. However, I did not go deeper on the worker in my analogy. Right. You spent most of the time talking about the commodity itself, right? The thing, the commodity fetishism that is the ghost there along with it. Recently, I have been playing a lot of Legends of Runeterra. One of my favorite champions in the game is Kindred, which on the League of Legends wiki is described thusly. Tales of the spirit god known as the Kindred go back millennia, making it difficult to determine their true origin. Some of the earliest legends say that tell the story of a pale man with dark hair who was very lonely, as all things would have to meet this man at the hour of their death. As all things, okay. For this, the people shunned him. So the lonely man took an axe and split himself in two so he would always have a friend. Death and labor are among the most ordinary facts of life, yet both are met with misunderstanding at best or hostility at worst. The commodity of dead labor. The commodity is dead labor, right? Okay. The shell, the ghost, the husk, or the mere corpse, however we want to think about that. Where was I? The commodity is dead labor. If we stop pretending we are so distant from death, perhaps we can stop letting capitalism fill the world with ghosts. Some existentialism in there too. The dread, right? The fear and dread that causes people to reject, that actually ties into the thing that Grey Otter was talking about. The fear, right. Stop. It's just such a there's so much. Stop pretending we are so distant from death. And I think that's the part that needs a lot more unpacking from me to really get this. Perhaps we can stop letting capitalism fill the world with ghosts. I get that concept, right? That's the utopia that we want. That's the telos. The end goal is a world in which our labor is something we live with, not where our labor goes to the hands of other people to die, who don't know us and are alienated from us and only see us at best as a means to achieving commodity. Oh, there was more. I wasn't caught up in... Hey, welcome in, Sundry Clown Card. Good to see you. It's been a while. I hope you've been doing well. Using the Kindred, Grim Reaper splitting himself in two to explain what happens to the laborer when they create commodities. Right, okay. I understand that. However, unlike Kindred, it doesn't end up in a positive way. Instead, it fills the planet with ghosts. Right. Well, and I think the thing that works really well about that idea is we do split ourselves in that kind of way when we invest our all of our labor in things that go away that we don't see, right? It is actually soul crushing to do a menial, meaningless job. It is soul crushing, and that's what most people feel when they engage in economy, when they engage in labor, when they engage in working, however that is in the world. It feels to them meaningless because it literally is, right? And this goes to bullshit jobs, right? David Graver's bullshit jobs. What most people do doesn't matter. COVID was a great example of this. It showed everybody just how meaningless their jobs are, right? All of the people who didn't continue to go to work, because I did, right? I didn't get a day off when COVID happened and everything shut down. I didn't get a day off. I'm considered a necessary job. Educators are, and with the ones that are teaching K through 12, necessary, right? Those people do necessary work. People who work in hospitals, they do necessary work. Plumbers who had to show up and fix people's shitters, that's real fucking work. But the vast majority of Americans who were just sitting on the couch for a few weeks, right? Though all of those people realize their jobs are meaningless. Because, right, it's demonstrably so. We can all go without you going to work. We are all fine without you doing your labor, actually, right? And then I wish this was a lesson that America and that the world had actually figured out, that 60 to 70% of Americans stayed home for weeks at a time and nothing went wrong. No problems. The world didn't fall apart. Our economies didn't collapse, right? So we managed to still feed each other, house each other, take care of each other in hospitals, right? We can do that. We don't need the state and the capital and the incentives to do that. We will. I fucking promise. If we did away with state and capital and money, I promise people would still show up to hospitals. People would still feed each other. People would still build houses. People would still learn how to be plumbers so they can fix a shitter. That's just real material life, right? But I was going on that when we invest, right, the more that we invest ourselves out there and give our labor and then don't see any of that come back, the more of our soul we are really kind of splitting. I mean, and that's how I felt when I was working retail and selling people cell phones that were basically the exact same thing as the cell phone that they've got in their pocketbook, right? I'm just going to charge you $800 or $900 more for this and establish a contract that now you're beholden to so that you can be a slave to capital. For nothing, for no reason, for no gain. That the cell phone in your hand is as good as this, right? And when that's your job, you know that what you do is bullshit. It's not rewarding. It's not fulfilling. It's not meaningful. At the end of a shift, I was exhausted in a way that sleep did not quite repair. Right, because it's emotional, it's spiritual, it's not just your physical exertion, right? I didn't have the language for it then, but something had been taken from me that wasn't exactly strength and wasn't exactly time. I thought I was remembering teenage drudgery. Now I see I was encountering surplus value for the first time. Right, real value. And we were actually talking an awful lot about different kinds of value on last stream. I knew that our conversation was going to eventually get to value, what's the thing? Commodity valuation. Where we are trying to figure out the use value, labor value, whatever the other, there's a whole bunch of them. I don't spend a lot of time quibbling about different kinds of value yet. Still, the splitting still follows the same logic of kindred. When I labored, I was lonely. No one really wanted to see me. I mean, who actually enjoys parting with their money, right? And yet, they still had to see me. Under capitalism, we are all dealers in death. My dead labor is the commodity, the customer's own death labor in the cash. Right. I absolutely. Sex work bullshit? I don't think it is. No, sex work is necessary. I would not call that bullshit job at all. That's though the way that it's necessary in our current structure is also in itself gross. That's not the fault of sex workers. That's the way that we have structured society, is to build a society that makes men, especially, though I will expand this out because we're not just talking about men. There's a whole lot of people who depend on sex work, right? So, but I do want to focus first is that we have a society that specifically makes men feel lonely and insecure and inadequate, right? And that's by design. To emasculate the men so that they are in line in maintaining the patriarchal order. It's part of the hierarchy is that the better you perform it, the less you're punished by it, right? So everyone is punished by patriarchy. Everyone is punished by patriarchy. Those who perform its function, and very much in the same way that Kiyomitara is talking about when we engage in capitalism, right? And in this perpetuation of patriarchy, we perform the role of abusing others as the role, right? As the function, and that is exactly the same thing that capital is also doing to us, is forcing us to extract from each other life force, right? In this way that Kiyomitara is building this beautiful analogy. I really like this an awful lot. Puritanical capitalism. Moving on from just the males. So we also want to talk about why sex work is important on a broader scale, because some people actually depend on sex work for therapy. So, some people actually engage with the BDSM community or with other kinds of communities, and sex work is a part of that. And it's for some people, it's literally therapy, life-saving therapy. And I didn't want that to be pushed aside either. And it's not just about men, right? Like I said, not just men, women, and non-binary people also, imagine, enjoy the products of sex work. Was how best to phrase that, and I don't think that was really quite the best way, but we did all right. Fucking puritanical capitalism. I keep reading that and just, yeah. Can you say more about how you see a ghost? Is the labor ghost alive when the thing is being made, produced? Does the ghost go somewhere else or stay in the product commodity? Haunting is more it, yes. Oh no, thank you for letting me know that I had major lag. Hopefully it gets caught up and stays. I can hear the wind is kicking up pretty nasty out there, which does sometimes interfere with my internet, but we don't have any clouds in the sky, so I think that we'll be okay. Do you mean ghosts that can interact somehow? And I don't think the ghosts themselves interact in this analogy. we are moved by them, right? Because we recognize. And one of the good, they're posting the article. That's the previous one, right? Yep. That in this they begin talking about abandoned towns. And the thing that is creepy and unsettling about the abandoned towns, it's not it's not the literal ghosts that remain behind. It's the impression that life is supposed to be there, but is absent, right? It's that we can recognize there should be goings on, there should be life here, but instead what is left is an empty husk and nobody to give any more meaning other than this emptiness. And this same kind of idea is in when the laborer who is putting together your cell phone, right? It's some child in some third world countries putting together the parts for your cell phone and finally gets the whole thing completed. And it takes a whole bunch of laborers who are all engaged in exploitative labor. And then when it finally gets to you, what you open is the empty city. It's the empty husk. It's there should be life in the labor that has been poured into the thing. But instead, there's just this empty, lifeless reminder, right, that most of us are pretty unaware of, right? And this is commodity fetishism. This is commodity fetishism. Is that when we look at the thing that we've purchased, right, it's unavoidable to know, right? It's unavoidable to know what goes into it. At this point, maybe 10 years ago, people could feign ignorance, but, students in my class are bringing up the fact that their cell phones that are using for the class are produced by, children who are harvesting cobalt, right? And lithium, and they know, they are aware, they look at their cell phone and see the oppression. They see the symbol of capitalist oppression. Gentrification also makes ghosts of infrastructure. Very good point. Absolutely. And that's yeah, exactly. It's that kind of thing. I hope I've done an okay job of explaining it, but you should read the article because that's going to explain it way better than me. I'm just trying to do it real fast and probably am not doing it great justice. But I do want to go back. Okay, so good. Let's, first thing I want to do is I think that we can move on past this. This was my feeling that I wanted to get out there and intimate, and I think I talked about that enough. That I would like for authoritarians to stop calling themselves leftists and for leftists to stop being authoritarian, but that's not real. Right, which is why we've changed this to socialist ontology rather than a leftist ontology. But I'm going to scroll down. This is the outline that we were working with. It's gotten pushed down to the second page now with all of the notes that we have to work through. But I've left some of this as it is, right? We're going to come back and fix some of this. Figure out if we want to redirect our efforts, redefine some of the things that we've already talked about in the spirit of continuing a leftist ontology. And is this the direction that we want to stay in? Is this the right thing that we should be doing? Should we instead be trying to develop a communist ontology or a anarchist ontology, or those are the kind of things that I think that we need to be sure about. I like the idea of playing with socialism for now, to get a better idea. And I feel like I'm learning an awful lot about socialism as we go. And Jane's definitions that we started with, socialism is whenever either the worker or the people both own and control the economic functions of society, and that communism is a decommodified global socialism. I think that those work really well. We don't need to change any of that stuff. But I wanted to spend some time talking about this stuff today. This confusion between democratic socialism and social democracy. So, I found some videos. This one I want to watch first. I think it'll be really quick. It won't take us very long to get through it. And this is going to give us a good starting point, right? For us to begin actually hammering out how we would like to understand these terms and how we would like to use the language around these terms. And our noonist, like and our communist, right? And our noonist and our noonist. I'm trying to practice and our noonist. It doesn't flow off the tongue very well. But there's another one that I want to watch after this that I think that we'll have more to say about this, probably. So we're gonna play this, get an idea of a conception of how to think about the difference, and then we'll decide whether or not we like this difference, right? Let's go from there.
Social democracy and democratic socialism. Are they the same or are they different? Hey, it's Dan Zimmerman. Welcome back to the channel where we'll be comparing and contrasting core philosophies, economic systems, the role of government, welfare, and examples between social democracy and democratic socialism. Let's first compare their core philosophies. Social democracy advocates for a mixed economy, combining market-oriented capitalism with social policies aimed at reducing inequality and ensuring social justice. Its core philosophy is to strike a balance between the private sector and the government's role in promoting welfare. Democratic socialism seeks...
Okay, so the first time I watched this, I needed to back up and hear that whole thing again. So, because I needed that, I'm going to assume that it will be helpful for the rest of you, right? So that we can be sure about what we're talking about first before we start talking about the other thing.
First, compare their core philosophies. Social democracy advocates for a mixed economy, combining market-oriented capitalism with social policies aimed at reducing inequality and ensuring social justice. Its core philosophy is to strike a balance between the private sector and the government's role in promoting welfare.
Also, I need to move me. Or just, I'm going to hide me. That'll be better. So that you can actually see what's going on there.
Philosophy is to strike a balance between the private sector and the government's role in promoting welfare. Democratic socialism seeks to transform capitalist societies into socialist ones through democratic means. It advocates for the redistribution of wealth and the democratization of the economy to ensuring social justice. Its core philosophy is to strike a balance between the private sector and the government's role in promoting welfare. Democratic socialism seeks to transform capitalist societies into socialist ones through democratic means. It advocates for the redistribution of wealth and the democratization of the economy, where...
Okay, so let me bring me back. So, from this definition, from given by this video, which I'll probably share in a minute, social democracy is trying to take capitalism and make capitalism less terrible. Not trying to do away, move away from, or eliminate, ameliorate capital at all. It's trying to balance capital with social needs, right? The fact that capitalism tries to crush people and a counterbalance to try and protect the people from the capitalism that's trying to crush people. As opposed to democratic socialism, which is directly opposed to capitalism and is trying to undermine, work against, and move away from capitalism while also using the tools of capitalism. Seems to me like that's the most meaningful distinction. Social democracy, from this conception, wants or doesn't have a problem with capitalism staying around forever. Doesn't see capitalism as something which must be eradicated, rather something that we learn how to balance, as opposed to democratic socialism, which is actually trying to overcome, to actually do away with. Maybe not doing direct battle with, but trying to undermine or ameliorate the effects of or shift us away from capitalism. Democratic means electoral politics. No, democratic means, right? Democratic means, and yes, it is electoral, yes. Right. And as distinct to from, right, as distinct from, for example, good, Jane. Thank you for that clarification, because that was helpful for me in a way that I didn't expect. Right, as distinct from anarchists who are trying to build dual state power structures, independent, right? Don't care about electoralism at all, right? Trying to undermine capitalism, but a completely different strategy, right? And this is a matter of strategy, right? So, well, social democracy really isn't a strategy; it's a compromise. I've got a lot of feelings and a lot of things to say about this already. But I'm gonna try and bite my tongue a little bit, and let you all get your impressions of this before, because I've watched this video and I watched some of the next one too. So, direct versus representative, right? And that's another very helpful, meaningful distinction too. With social democracy, we don't really care about how the balance is maintained or achieved or accomplished, right? But with democratic socialism, we care about direct representation. That's the getting access to the levers, right? That's what Jane is talking about when we're talking about the workers having access and control of the levers of how the economy works, how the society works, how their workplaces are organized, right? That's exactly right. Good. Oh, so let me finish. Let me let the video finish.
Workers have a greater say in decision-making processes. Next, let's compare their economic systems. Social democracies maintain a predominantly capitalist economic system with private ownership of businesses and industries. However, they believe in regulating the economy through progressive taxation, labor laws, and social programs to promote economic equality and protect vulnerable citizens. Democratic socialists challenge the traditional capitalist economic system by advocating for worker-owned cooperatives and public ownership of key industries. They aim to reduce income inequality and give workers more control over their work and economic outcomes. Now let's look at the role of government. In social democracies, the government plays an active role in providing social services, education, health.
Sorry, I gotta pause for real quick. I need this as an emote. The government doing stuff. This is the government doing stuff.
Healthcare and other essential needs. It intervenes in the market to correct market failures and maintain a stable, fair economic environment. Democratic socialism envisions a more significant role for the government in managing the economy and ensuring that wealth and power are more evenly distributed. The government is responsible for overseeing industries in the public interest and protecting workers' rights. Now on to the last comparison. Let's take a look at welfare. Social democracy.
One other thing that I want to back up and say something about here. This actually really encapsulates the difference between a negative conception of liberty and a positive conception of liberty really quite well. Right? In a negative conception of liberty, which is very liberal, I think we spent a lot of time talking about that on Wednesday, that a negative conception of liberty is liberal, right? And it's the harms, Mills's harm principle is the basis for liberalism. Mills's harm principle is, as long as that person is not doing direct harm to somebody else, the state has no right to interfere in what that person is doing. And this means that the landlord can kick somebody out of their home, right? Because that's an indirect harm. It's harm, but our liberal society recognizes this as an indirect harm, and really it's this person's fault anyway, right? And but if this now homeless person breaks into a vacant home so that their family doesn't freeze to death, then they have violated somebody else's property rights and have done harm. That's recognized as real harm. Breaking into somebody's house so that your family doesn't freeze to death is seen as real harm, whereas kicking somebody else out on the street for not paying rent isn't, right? And in this kind of idea, this mindset, right, the government is supposed to let companies do whatever they want to do. They let them have free reign. But while the companies are doing whatever they want to do, the government is going behind them and pick up people off the ground and trying to patch the bullet wounds that the police left behind and trying to feed the people, and right, like it's a welfare system that is trailing behind a bunch of bloodthirsty miscreants who are just doing harm to the society. And the government is completely fine with those miscreants going around and doing the harm, but they are patching some people up, right? They are ameliorating some of the harm that's being done. Whereas opposed to a positive conception of liberty, you don't let people go around and do harm. That's not freedom, right? And that's the paradox. When Eleni was talking about some people's freedom entails interfering with the freedoms of others, and this is a paradox of freedom that cannot be the case. You have an X amount of freedom, you can't increase it by taking somebody else's. That's not the way that freedom works. Right, but if democratic socialism has accomplished what it was supposed to accomplish, that is, the people have direct access. Right? If access to the levers of government, that government isn't evil. Right? It won't do harm to those people. If people have access to the levers of the government won't do harm to those people. Right, and that's I think the clearest distinction between these two. And again, I meant to not be so. I've got some feelings about this. But anyways, I'll let the video finish out now.
responsible for overseeing industries in the public interest and protecting workers' rights. Now on to the last comparison. Let's take a look at welfare. Social democracies prioritize building a robust welfare state to ensure a high quality of life for their citizens. Similar to social democracy, democratic socialism also emphasizes a comprehensive welfare system. However, it goes further by aiming to eliminate poverty and guaranteeing access to basic needs like housing, education, and healthcare as a right. Lastly, let's take a look at 3 countries often considered as social democracies. Sweden is frequently cited as a prime example of a social democracy. It has a mixed market economy with extensive welfare programs, high levels of public spending on healthcare, education, and social services, and a strong emphasis on social equality. Denmark is another prominent social democracy known for its comprehensive welfare system, universal healthcare, and generous social benefits. It combines a market economy with a high degree of social protection and income redistribution. Norway is often included in the list of social democracies due to its significant state involvement in various sectors of the economy, including oil and gas, education and healthcare, and the country prioritizes social welfare and maintains a high standard of living for its citizens. When we look at democratic socialism examples, there aren't really any countries that fit the definition exactly. Historically, an example of a democratic socialist government was back in the United Kingdom between 1945 and 1951. Large sectors of the economy were taken into the public ownership. The government took responsibility for ensuring minimally decent standards of living, as well as those who implemented this vision self-identified as socialists. Did you enjoy this video comparing social democracy and democracy?
What do you say, chat? Did you enjoy the video? I'm gonna drop the link in chat. And sure, I'll go ahead and put it over here on YouTube too. Because I really didn't have a lot of problems with it. I didn't think. I keep meaning to push this button. Keep trying to come back to this. And maybe this is helpful too. But with no information about whatever that British system was at that time, this is really, I really don't know much about that, about Britain in this time period, personally. But let's go back to, whether or not I think that this video is right, I think that the video is helpful. Right? I think that these illustrations are actually kind of helpful in the explanation. It makes sense to me, right? Yeah. Okay. Okay. This other one though. I haven't watched all the way through, but I got about a minute in and I was like, I think that we're going to have something to say about this one. So let's see what this one has to say. Oh, and before, full disclaimer, before I move on, right? I might be critical of other people's understanding or evaluation sometimes. Not because I am trying to disparage or discredit or ridicule anybody. It's not not my intention, right? Because I don't know what this video is going to say. I don't know what I'm going to say in response to it. So just as a preface, I'm not interested in dragging anybody, picking on anybody, making fun of anybody. If there are criticisms, they will be intended to be productive, so that we can all be better informed and more knowledgeable, right? That's going to be the idea. And because I don't know if this is good or bad, or I'm just throwing that out there. If this is terrible, for example, and we end up saying talking about how terrible this is, right? It won't be because we want to sit around and point and laugh at somebody. It'll be because we want to be better people by engaging with the ideas and talking about them, and it would be nice to get the information out and correct people if they are wrong. What does public ownership mean is a question I have. Good. Let's answer that for a minute first before I play this video. Public ownership, I think, does need to have some more clarification. So I think a good place to start is the step that we were talking about Richard Wolff wanting to democratize the workplaces. Not a bad start, right? I don't think that Richard Wolff's plan goes nearly far enough, is serious enough, is directed at the right things, but you know, they're doing something, and I'm not. So, you know, I'm not going to talk trash about that. I just but anyways, Richard Wolff's conception of a democratized workplace, or workplaces, so that all of our workplaces that anybody works, those places themselves become democratic institutions which are democratically run. And that's not a bad step in the right direction. Oh no, welcome in, Matt. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. No worries. Glad you're here. Late's better than never. Right, if we democratize only workplaces, and I've got issues with that because, you know, what about homemakers? What about sex workers? What about other kinds of work that isn't legitimized or isn't considered actually valuable labor, despite the fact that the reason why we're here is because somebody at some point stays home to take care of the kids. It's really, really fucking valuable labor that I wish our society valued a little bit more, because it's literally how society keeps going, right? And anyways, so that would be a kind of public ownership. But we might also look at Venezuela and the way that they have nationalized their industries, the oil industries and the other kinds of things that take place in Venezuela are owned by the state, but the people have some kind of direct access to how those things are, how they're managed, or how they participate in them. Maybe that's not a good example, because that's really still just state capitalism. I don't know that much about Venezuela's situation, and now that I've started to talk about it like I know what I'm talking about. Yeah, that's probably not a good example. Never mind. Public ownership is right. Let's expand that. Would be more if we could well, actually, let's look back at this. Right, because I think that this mentioned some public ownership here. No, it didn't. No, that's not helpful at all. If the state owns a means of production, then the people would not have direct access. Unless it is actually some kind of direct democracy. But we might be tripping over the word state there in that, because we've gone back and forth on how we've used state before, and right. Public ownership would be like a city-run ISP. Yes, right. Well, yes. That is the that's the broadest definition of it, because that's still completely under capital. And in that situation, Matt, we still don't have any direct access to that. But I think that is the right example, and I think that is true, right? That's or a fire department is another good example. Municipalities, water treatment facilities are sometimes owned by cities or by counties. Sometimes they're privately owned, so that's another example that we might go with. Right, so, okay, then yes, if it's directly democratic, then it wouldn't be a state, right? Thank you for the clarification. Like I said, we've been back and forth on that, so yes, if the state owns the means of production, then the people don't have direct access, right? Yes, and then it's just state capitalism, right, which we've talked about is not the right direction. Right, that's more capitalism. It's just now that it's different capitalists, right? That it's no longer Elon Musk, it's President Trump now. But that's what's happened there. State Highway Department with their own construction crew and equipment. That's right. That's right. They don't outsource. The DOT does not outsource. It took me a second to think about that, but yeah, they every state's Department of Transportation is the government entity that does buy the machinery and hire the employees to work for the state. Right. Exactly. That is another example. And so here's the thing with this kind of public ownership, it is still better. Still volumes better. We are still talking about a capitalist system. We're not moving far enough away. But I don't want to get caught up in this purity thing, right? Where we can't do anything because we're insisting on purity. Say it's somewhere between capitalism and owning the means of production, unless the service inherently exploits users like Amtrak. Huh. See, and that's therein lies the difficulty, though, right? Because if the people don't have direct access to the levers of controlling their workplace, how is any of those situations not exploitative, right? Even the post office, right? That's not a separate entity. That's the government owned. It is a state, a federal, a federal entity that is itself. But all of those employees are still exploited. Exploited. I didn't have to add the extra syllables there. Public ownership is meant to transfer wealth from citizens to state. In a form of profit, it is state capitalism. Yeah, it seems to me Dark Ray Outer says, seems to me question is what is directly, indirectly, and in between. And how do you measure that? Yes. So, representative democracy is at best indirectly, right? A representative democracy will always be at best indirectly, which is still better than not at all, right? I'm not a fan of gradients of bad. Right, I'm not a fan of picking the lesser of among a few different kinds of evils, and that's with this conversation that we're, and this is good. And, you know, it's nothing about anyone that's saying anything. Everything that everyone's putting in chat is beautiful. It's just that this distinction to me, this distinction to me at all seems to me to just be choosing the lesser of evils. And how do I don't know. Hold on. Let me think about why I'm frustrated. I'm feeling emotional about this, and let me just think about it for a minute instead of just reacting. Because Dark Ray Outer is completely right. Right. That's what we've got to figure out, is what does directly mean, and how do we get there from where we are? If we pay taxes and the services are included, like the fire department, it's still not owning the means of production. It's outside the scope of capital. Yes. Yes, it is, Matt, in very important ways. So, let me pull up this real fast. Well, hold on. Socialism is just electoral state capital, social democracy. Let me read this again. Jane says, democratic socialism is just electoral state capitalist social democracy. Yes, but potentially with the possibility of the people having more access to control over their conditions directly. But now that I'm thinking about it, my pushback doesn't really do anything against your claim. And and this is where we were before we watched the video, right? That how are they actually different? Because I think that you are kind of correct that it collapses back into social democracy, that democratic socialism is gonna keep collapsing back into social democracy. And I just don't know that that's an avoidable outcome. Right? I was trying to push back against what you said there, Jane, but my pushback doesn't actually push back. It's the best is that when the political pendulum is swinging, this is the best that it can do. When the political pendulum is swinging, it does give some of the people some opportunity to claim some more of the means of production, little bits at a time here and there. But it's just the possibility. It's not any kind of guarantee. Right? When that pendulum is swinging back and forth, That's the best we can get. Oh, I didn't read this. I'm getting some lag. Hopefully it's not going to affect you all. Oh. It's not lag. Ownership and who benefits. Oh, that reminds me, Matt. I'm so glad that that you reminded me. I also want to go back to this. This is on my thing. Not there. And I don't know if we're ready to dive into this just yet. Wait, where'd it go? Oh, I know where it is. But I've been thinking about Matt's comment. There's a big difference between resistance with liberation in mind and resistance to usurp power. Talking about results, not execution. Now, I spent a lot of time. I've been mulling this over, and I do want to talk about this. So teasing that. But I want to wrap up the thing we're talking about now. Sometimes you want immediate response, not to wait for deliberations. Yes. Yeah. Very indirect is better than nothing. It's just capitalism with treats. Okay. Right, we get to control some of the things. Social democracy, socialism, that is. Right, okay, yeah. If the people had direct access, then the people would do it themselves. Right, if the people had direct access, right. Let me throw another wrench into that. If you own something, you can do harm with it. For a silly example, you can hit your finger with a hammer. You do harm with it. Well, okay, yeah, okay. For a second, I was like, I was getting the subjects mixed up. But yes, if you have a hammer, you can do something harmful with it, and you can even harm yourself with it. So a fossil fuel co-op company can still decide to pollute, right? Yeah, I get what you mean. This is similar to one of the paradoxes of democracy, where if you could create a perfect democracy, which is paradoxical in the first place, so you can't. But if you could in theory produce a perfect democracy, there would be nothing to stop those people from democratically electing a king. Right, that's that same kind of that same kind of thing. But I think that there is sufficient pushback. Do I need to go the long way, or can I get there a shorter way? Well, okay. What I would say to push back to that, Gray Otter, is that there would still be an incredibly high chance, especially from my understanding of Western minds' perspective of the world. There's a very, very good chance that given the opportunity for the levers of control, people who have the levers of control might do things that are irresponsible or reckless or maybe foolish, right? That I could see that absolutely being a thing. But I would temper that concern with a diversity of tactics, which or a diversity of perspectives is what I mean. It is diversity of tactics, but it's a diversity of perspectives, which we would necessarily have if workers or people have collective control over the means of production. it is possible for them to do irresponsible things, but it's unlikely for them to do things which are harmful to other people. And the reason why we have some kind of safeguard against those systems doing harm to other people is that a diversity of perspectives is going to catch that. People are going to say, but that's going to affect me, right? That's going to affect my neighbor. No, that's going to affect Mr. Peterson down the road, right? And if we actually have real control over the levers, the people, I mean, then we'll also necessarily have, I believe, maybe I'm mistaken about this. Maybe I'm making some assumptions that I don't have grounds for making. But I think that we can count on a diversity of perspectives to help, and especially if we are including indigenous perspectives that have life knowledge that has been handed down from generation to generation for hundreds or thousands of years. Those kinds of perspectives are going to add to that diversity of perspectives, and I think help mitigate some of those kinds of errors. And that's the myth of business, is that you need to have one decision maker at the top, because we gotta make split second decisions. It's always about we gotta make split second decisions, right? Which really that's not real in business anyway. But having one decider is the worst way to go about doing things, because one perspective misses things all of the time, right? Even just two pairs of eyes is better than one. And if we could have four, even fucking better, right? But it's just, it's weird that this myth of the hierarchy, that we have to have somebody in charge, we have to have an executor to make those important split-second decisions, or to make the decisions that nobody else can make. That's fucking bullshit. That's such garbage. That's such big man, what is it called? Great man syndrome. We don't need great manism. We need a diversity of viewpoints. Direct democracy is when people would decide how society is run themselves without intermediaries, right? And that's exactly right. What we want is no intermediaries. But we also don't want to get caught up again. So this is something that's hard for me to do, is to stay grounded in what's accomplishable, right? That what we can get to. Spider CEOs, 4 pairs of eyes, right? Do we insist that there must be no intermediaries? I'm an anarchist, so I'm like, that's the camp that I'm traditionally in. Do we insist that we have no intermediaries? Or do we accept that might be a little idealistic for our situation, for our material conditions? It might be the case that we really do have to, where is it? I thought I could hop right over to it. I was gonna be all pro streamer for a minute. Right. So, and to be clear, I think social democracy is absolute trash. Just out of the gate, across the board, I don't think it's good. I don't think it moves us in a direction that is moving away from capital. And this is what I kept saying the other day, on Wednesday, over and over. I don't understand how integrating capitalism into a system that is neatly balanced is supposed to help us eliminate capitalism, because it won't ever. And I do fear that Jane's pushback concern about this is accurate, that democratic socialism it's like rolling the dice. To me it seems like we are just rolling the dice, and we're rolling the dice, not knowing the odds, not knowing how many other people are going to roll the dice with us, not having any kind of guarantees or assurances that we are going to secure any kind of victory whatsoever, as opposed to just building flat power structures without electoral permission that feed and house people and give people little pockets of freedom, right? Like, those are things that we can do that will win, that will change people's lives, that will, right? We know that feeding people is a good end toward working to, right? We know that that's the right way. And right, democratic socialists who are trying to sabotage the Democratic Party in trying to reshape the landscape of electoral politics, more power to you. But I'm pretty sure that's just going to be more smoke and mirrors. It's going to be a whole lot of extra more steps. And a lot of people, I fear, are going to put a lot of time and energy and effort into, getting somebody elected into office, and then, we lost the election. Now, all of that money and all of those resources and all of those labor hours accomplish zero. Right? But those people instead could have been feeding people, housing people, trying to secure health care, right? And those will have material benefits. Those will make the world a better place. Democratic socialism, it's crapshoot with really terrible odds. And social democracy it's like you're rolling the dice, but the dice are loaded. That's social democracy, more like blow shield. How did blow? Disloppressy. There you go. Blow shield disloppressy. Can't even say the word, but yeah. Good. Where are we now? So, we haven't watched that other video. So let me put this other video on and get this going. And maybe it's not a good use of our time anymore, but okay, so the kind of where I am is that socialism needs to not have anything to do with these other two. That's kind of where I'm sitting right now. If we are serious about doing something with, where is it? I'll get it in a minute. There we go. We're serious about doing something about this project. If we are, then I think that project needs to necessarily exclude social democracy and democratic socialism and accept that those things aren't socialism, right? Because that's just because they have socialism in the name doesn't mean they have anything to do with the ideology, and that they're not going to be a vehicle for getting us there. So how do we conceive of a socialism that isn't either one of these things? That'll be the next part of the project. But let me get to this other video and play this while I use the restroom.
I call myself a democratic socialist.
No, you're not. You're a social democrat. Hey, it's Lad, and this is democratic socialism versus social democracy. I come across this very often, and I feel like there's general confusion between these two ideologies. On one side, we often have social democrats calling themselves democratic socialists, and on the other side, we have some right-wingers calling liberals and social democrats socialists and communists. And this culminates in massive confusion and pointless arguments, and it doesn't have to be this way. Let's start with talking about what these ideologies have in common. First, they would be both considered leftist. And to extremely oversimplify, we would generally define leftist ideologies as those who prefer economic collectivism over individualism. Although, depending on the status quo in your country, social democracy could be considered center-left or centrist. Next, history. Both democratic socialism and social democracy originally stem from Marxism, and for much of the early 20th century, the lines between social democrats and democratic socialists have been blurred. A few examples might include the Mensheviks in Russia or the Labour Party in the UK, which has evolved, along with the labour movement worldwide, from a democratic socialist to a social democratic party. Additionally, both ideologies are inherently electoralist, and both wish to establish their end goal via democratic means and the framework that democracy provides. And this is where we see the main difference, the overall end goal of the ideology. The end goal of social democrats is still within a capitalist system. However, the system has to have a framework of social nets, public education, public healthcare, and even some public businesses. Even though the state is greatly expanded, they do not seek to abolish the capitalist system, they just seek to change it. On the other hand, the end goal of democratic socialists is to abolish the whole capitalist system and continue in a socialist economy, be it a market socialist economy or a planned economy. Basically, we can say that democratic socialists are radical social democrats, and while they would agree on many issues, their respective ideal societies are very different. The right-wing equivalent of this might be anarcho-capitalists and libertarians, with ANCAPs wanting to abolish the system altogether and libertarians just wanting to reform it. Now that we know all the definitions, let's talk about where I see the main problem with this misunderstanding.
Alright, it played a lot more. It took me longer to get there and back than I thought it was gonna, so I'm gonna back it up. I only watched the first minute of this, so let me back this up a little bit so I can get caught up too. Sorry.
We have some right-wingers calling liberals and social democrats socialists and communists. And this culminates in massive confusion and pointless arguments, and it doesn't have to be this way. Let's start with talking about what these ideologies have in common. First, they would be both considered leftist. And to extremely oversimplify, we would generally define leftist ideologies as those who prefer economic collectivism over individualism. Although, depending on the status quo in your country, social democracy could be considered center-left or centrist. Next, history.
Okay, this was the first thing I was, I'm frozen on Twitch? Why would I be frozen over on Twitch? I sure am. Huh. Did I get disconnected? Well, I wouldn't be able to ask you all that question. Sorry for the technical difficulties all. Wow, this is taking a long time to load. Okay, we are back though. I've got me back. No, it was legit. I was having an issue. I couldn't get it to load to display anything, but we're still online everywhere else. Good. We're still good. Good. Thank you for letting me know there was a problem. We're back now. Oh, right. So, I'm not sure, right? Going back to a concern that I had before when we were talking about leftism in general. I'm not sure that we can really call either of these leftism. Not really. As I understand, leftism is anti-capitalism, is anti-capital. So we might say, well, the democratic socialists who are trying to change electoral politics to push it a direction that's more socialist. Okay, that's left adjacent. That's heading the right direction of leftism. It's still not really right. It's the closest thing that you can be to left and still be a liberal, right? But I don't think you can be a liberal and leftist, and I don't think that you can be doing capital or capitalist things and still be a leftist. Right. Yeah, exactly. Capitalism plus treats. And that's all it is. Bread and circus, right? And smoke and mirrors. And it's just more and that's what it feels like. And that's not to, I don't want to start any drama, but like with some of the larger leftist streamers, that I feel like a lot of the larger leftist streamers are bread and circus. They really are just part of the show. That it's just a different tent with its own spectacle. But it's also, you know, if you're watching Mike from PA isn't getting you to go out there and do anything. Isn't talking you into being a part of a program, isn't telling you to be out in the streets, isn't telling you to build dual power structures on your own, right? Mike from PA is telling people to hop into his tent and watch his spectacle, right? And how is that not just more circus? Good. Now all of a sudden Nightbot is working on YouTube.
Both democratic socialism and social democracy originally stemmed from Marxism, and for much of the early 20th century, the lines between social democrats and democratic socialists have been blurred. A few examples might include the Mensheviks in Russia or the Labour Party in the UK, which has evolved, along with the labour movement worldwide, from a democratic socialist to a social democratic party. Additionally, both ideologies are inherently electoralist, and both wish to establish their end goal via democratic means and the framework.
Sorry, I'm having trouble hearing it for some reason. The audio seems like it's really quite low, huh? It's funny that you mentioned No Kings. I'm thinking about attending tomorrow, to be honest. Thinking about it. You know, the last time I attended a protest, it wasn't very productive. I didn't meet anybody. You know, I was really hoping to find somebody to connect with that no worries. Good to see you, Eleni. I'm glad that you're here. Better late than not at all. Same thing I said to Matt. No worries. Yeah, I'm not sure that it's going to do any good that I go to the No Kings protest tomorrow, but maybe I'll finally, you know, meet some people who are doing some stuff and find a way that I can find, you know, get some people around me who are already involved doing stuff that I can just help them do stuff. All right. I'll probably bring the kafaya and wear that. I did last time. But I'll paint some kind of something that's like that. Good. Yeah. Oh, so I need to back up the video, 'cause, like I said, I wasn't hearing it very well. I've turned it up a little bit louder for you all too. It seems to me way quieter than the previous video. And this is another one who talks really fast.
A few examples might include the Mensheviks in Russia or the Labour Party in the UK, which has evolved, along with the labour movement worldwide, from a democratic socialist to a social democratic party. Additionally, both ideologies are inherently electoralist, and both wish to establish their end goal via democratic means and the framework that democracy provides. And this is
electoralist. That's the thing that I missed last time. And we also want to establish a socialism which is distinct from Marxist-Leninism or any other necessarily militant strategy. I'm just, the thing that's getting me to think is, strategy is that the right word? Even in this context? Or is it just ideology? No, I mean, it would still be strategy. Yeah, I'm being too pedantic now. I'm kind of over Israel. Yeah, same. Free Palestine. I wish that Israel could just cease to exist. Poof. Poof. They have confronted people with Mexican, Venezuelan, and Palestinian flags or signs at the last two. I could believe that, but I don't anticipate I'll run into that kind of problem where I am. The last protest I went to, Chinga la Migra, was a common thing that pretty much everybody was saying. Lots of signs were written in Spanish, lots of Spanish flags, or Mexican flags, excuse me. And I did see some Palestinian flags there last time, now that I'm thinking about it, but my area is a little bit weird. In that we tend to have the fringes. We are the extremes. There are not very moderates. Not very many moderates, right? Statistically, in most other cities that I've lived, most of the people in those cities have been very moderate, and there's a few outliers who are a little bit weird. I don't live in that kind of place. Where I live, there aren't normal people. There just aren't. On a 5-week streak, 5-stream streak. Thank you, Eleni. That's fucking awesome. Appreciate the support. Yeah. Yeah, we cannot just wait for Netanyahu to go away. I'd say I agree with that. Yeah, I also agree with that. Bibi isn't enough. It's the whole apparatus. It's Israel, the state, needs to no longer exist. Israel, the whole state. Raise it to the ground. And that's, to be clear, right, in case anybody wants to try and take me out of context, that doesn't include the people in the state. State is an institutional apparatus that is operated by people, right? The state is not the people. Some of the people in control of that state ought to face some kind of trial and some kind of accountability. But after the priority of is dismantling the state, raise that to the ground. Israel's just mini America. Yeah. Well, it's hard to say though. And it's not better here. It's I would say, well, I mean, I really can't make any of the kind of claims that I'm thinking. of that I believe would be true, but I don't know enough about the actual demographics and those is people's understanding of freedom or their feelings and sentiments toward their own. So I can't make any statements about that without just making baseless conjecture. Yeah, America was way worse, right? And that's something else too. America has been around a lot longer and has had a lot of shifts in a lot of different. It's had a lot of different faces. They've all been evil and terrible. They don't have any good ones, but Israel's just a baby in comparison. And in this, so and that kind of what I was thinking, Eleni, is if we could zoom out, right, and see the future in 200 years from now, and if we could, and Israel isn't stopped, right, if they are allowed to persist on a 200-year timeline from now, what would that nation look like, right? Because it would have a lot of people in it who are enjoying the spoils, who don't suffer oppression, who don't, you know what I mean? Like, if they are allowed to do what America has done in history, they would probably end up very similar. Right, it's just they're new, they're small, and we don't get that perspective, that historical perspective to see, you know, to get the full context, which actually is a good lead in for me bringing this back, because I wanted to get this. Let's put this video on pause. Because I wanted to talk about this, and I don't want this opportunity to pass by. Back to here, and not that. This. Right, so I'm rethinking Matt's comment. Right? I've been thinking an awful lot about this comment. There's a big difference between resistance with liberation in mind and resistance to usurp power. And what I said to Matt in response to this comment was, materially, what's going to be the difference? It's still going to involve boots on the ground. It's still going to be violent. It's still going to be a state engaging in state violence against another state. And how is that different than regular empire? And when Matt made this other comment talking about results, not execution, one of the things that I didn't think about at that time, which I've spent a lot of time thinking about now, one of the things I didn't think about at the time was how much I would appreciate being liberated, right? You know, when we were talking about how, you know, the South Koreans would feel, you know, if we could look and see after the fact, if they feel like they're liberated, if they express gratitude for their liberation, then I was like, well, yeah, okay, well, maybe, right, is kind of the, but I still was really quite rigid about how I was thinking about the situation. But I imagined myself as the liberated, right? What if China, hypothetical here, what if China were to destabilize the United States government sufficiently that the military service members stopped holding their stations and abandoned abandon their stations. Not that military personnel would probably do that, but let's imagine we're pretending a hypothetical, right? And in this hypothetical, that China is able to militarily occupy the United States, right? In this hypothetical, I'm not fighting for America, right? I am greeting my liberators. I just hope the end of America Empire doesn't end with more empire. I completely agree with that. Liberate me harder, Daddy. Well, I mean, yes. But I don't think that's realistic, right? And for other Americans, that's not realistic. Nobody's coming to save us. It's up to us to do something about this ship, right? Right. So I've got this hypothetical, this fantasy. We're playing around with some ideas. Americans, nobody is coming to save you. You have to do the thing, right? But in this hypothetical, I got to thinking about it, and it's been a while since I've thought about the idea of a states revolution, that it could be materially possible for BRICS, right? For example, let's use a very real world example. If all of the BRICS nations were to really seriously come together and really seriously put together a war machine, think about all of the BRICS nations. If all of those nations worked together to destabilize the United States, they could do that. Historically, empire has just been switched out for another empire. Right. Let's not be delusional. We are not being the U.S. military. And stop using the dollar. We need general strikes as civilians and stop using the dollar. I think that that's true. And we need an alternative that's not cryptocurrency, right? Because cryptocurrency is accelerating the destruction of the planet. That's not going to help us get out of capitalism. But if Americans, and that BRICS, if you're listening, set up a marketplace so that Americans can purchase things from a marketplace without having to spend US dollars. BRICS do that, right? Think about how devastating that would be for the United States economy, for GDP. And just to be clear, this would not be devastated to the vast majority of Americans, right? For those of you who are not aware, GDP has nothing to do with how well you eat or how well you pay rent or your material conditions at all. Zero. GDP has zero to do with your material conditions, right? It only affects the portfolios of millionaires and billionaires, right? That's what we would be doing. Right now, half of BRICS has a sizable army. Brazil size would make them formidable. I have a good idea. Wheat berries as currency. Shelf stable, easy to divide, can consume with basic processing. Right, actually. That's not a bad idea. We as civilians are not beating the American army. Oh, right, yeah. That's what you meant, that we are not going to beat. And when I read it, I was like, beat. I bet they mean beat there. Yeah. Yeah, we're not beating the American military. And that probably one of the greatest things that could happen to America revolutionarily is for members of the United States military to get just a little bit of class consciousness. Right? It wouldn't take much. It would just take enough of them to realize that they can do something from within that apparatus to undermine that apparatus, especially when that apparatus is turned on the American people, which is the next phase of fascism that we are all supposed to be getting prepared for. Because that's what's happening next in the decline of the empire, right? The police are going to be the army for us. When the government has to go to war with us to maintain its control, which is what empire will do. Yes. To do a military coup would have to come from inside the military. And we would be much more likely to get a military coup to overthrow a democratic president. If we're just being honest, right? Because and I don't have a lot of information about this, so I don't want to say a whole lot about conspiracy stuff that I don't have facts to validate this. But from my understanding, the way that police departments have all across the United States have affiliated gang members who are on the police force, who are double agents, right, for the gangs and for the police, right, that work for the police. There are whole gangs inside the police, right, that vie for power and that have their own internal politics. And from what I understand, the military is not dissimilar in that way, that there are sects and groups of people who all know, right? They wink, wink, nudge, nudge, like they're all in the know kind of thing. And from what I understand, those groups of people in the military are not left-leaning. There are several police gangs too, separate from outside gangs. Right, yes, not just outside gang members in the police, but there are other kinds of gangs within the police, yes. It's much more complicated. It's really fucked up. There are more right-wingers, but a third are still a lot. Yeah, 1/3 is still a lot. LA County Sheriff has several rival gangs. Yeah, yeah. Oh, you meant more relatively. Yeah, no, I getcha. Right. So, anyway, that just got me thinking, right? That there is in part of what I'm trying to get to, right? I'm trying to think of an eloquent way to get there, and I'm just going to get there. Kind of what I'm trying to get to is that for me as an American, one of the things that's been difficult for me to wrap my head around is international solidarity. Because in the United States, it's very difficult to establish international solidarity with other comrades in other nations who are doing things. And so this is a difficulty that my American brain needs to get out of. And I'm trying to do it as vocally and publicly as possible to help also encourage others to remember we outnumber them, right? When it comes to workers, we do outnumber them. They make it seem like we are all the minority because they control the levers of society. They control social media. They control ISPs. So they can make information look however they want it to, right? There are lots of ways that we cannot know things about what's going on in the world because we live under a fascist dictator who monitors our information and doesn't give us freedom of information, doesn't give us access to the communities and other things that are happening all around the world. But there are already established international organizations, international collaborations of socialists and communists who are working together internationally already. Those things do exist out there. We're just so isolated from them. But we got to remember that is a thing. And that's what I'm trying to get to is, from my American perspective, I always want to think about these things in an American kind of way. And that's my pushbacks against Matt with regard to this comment, which I think was Elaine's idea in the first place, and then Matt was just steelmanning it. But I was thinking about this in a very American, in a very empire kind of way, right? I was thinking about this imperialistically from that kind of framework, rather than, any way that we can build revolution is a way that we should try to build revolution. I'm sorry for the delay. There's just a few things that I would like to say, but I don't know how to say them without violating TOS. I've thought about it 3 or 4 different ways, and if I can't figure out how to say it without violating TOS, then we'll just move on. I'll think about that and find another way to articulate it some other time. We just have to move on. 40% Dems and 50% Republicans and right-wingers, and then the rest is like whatever, maybe actually leftist independents or anything. Is that within the, are you talking about within the police force now? When you're talking about the 40% Dems and 50% Republicans? The most dangerous billionaires are the ones you never hear about, yes. I will absolutely agree with that, too. There was the guy from Palantir is, I think, a really good example of somebody who spent a lot of time and energy and effort to stay completely hidden from the public eye. it wasn't until probably the last 4 or 5 years that anybody that it became a name that was known around the United States. Yeah. And that's absolutely true. And one of the things that I think about too is that when we see this, because you can go and look online and there's a list of all of the most rich people, right? When I'm looking at those lists of the most rich people, I am aware I'm being lied to. Right? When I see the lists online of the richest people in the world, I know that I'm being lied to. Because the people who have the most access to the most wealth and capital are not going to be on that list. They're just not going to be on that list. Yeah, I'll think about it. And even Discord is a website, right? Even Discord is not entirely safe. But I'll think more about it and think about how to not violate TOS. I can't even talk around it. That's funny. I'll think creatively about it. That's what I wanted to do next. Right. Well, so I do think we should finish watching this video. It's not very long. And I'm glad that we took that aside and took that distraction. I really wanted to have that conversation and just get that out. To bookend the conversation about whether or not I want to talk more about this. But I don't yet have the language to talk about the kind of things that I would like to talk about. And I'll need to think about that. So I just, that's well, it'll probably have to be a meme. That gives me plenty of plausible deniability. That's a good idea. Peter Thiel has a New Zealand citizenship. Not residency, he was granted citizenship. Wow. Well, I mean, if you have enough money, you can buy pretty much anything that you want. Or dig up enough dirt on people with enough power that you can accomplish pretty much anything that you want. And that's what Epstein did. All right, let's... Need to get better at this. Something about the way that I've got this set up. Just, I haven't figured out how to make it. Actually, I've got a fantastic idea. And I'm not going to do that now. We'll do that later. Let's finish the video. Let's wrap this up.
To establish their end goal via democratic means and the framework that democracy provides. And this is where we see the main difference, the overall end goal of the ideology. The end goal of social democrats is still within a capitalist system. However, the system has to have a framework of social nets, public education, public healthcare, and even some public businesses. Even though the state is greatly expanded, they do not seek to abolish the capitalist system, they just seek to change it. On the other hand, the end goal of democratic socialists is to abolish the whole capitalist system and continue in a socialist economy, be it
While standard applicants must reside in New Zealand for 5 years, Thiel was exempt due to his promise to contribute to the local tech scene and his investment in companies like Xero. Right. Of course, billionaires are allowed to get around the rules. Yeah, exactly. Or Or, to put it a little bit differently, the rules are really only for us, poors. The rules are really only for the rest of us anyway, right?
A market socialist economy or a planned economy. Basically, we can say that democratic socialists are radical social democrats, and while they would agree on many issues, their respective ideal societies are very different. The right-wing equivalent of this might be anarcho-capitalists and libertarians, with ANCAPs wanting to abolish the system altogether and libertarians just wanting to reform it. Now that we know all the definitions, let's talk about where I see the main problem with this misunderstanding. The policies that American left-wing politicians like Bernie Sanders, Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez or Elizabeth Warren propose are not democratic socialist. Sure, a democratic socialist would definitely agree with them, but the ideas themselves are social democratic. Not to mention that all of the countries, such as Sweden or Norway, they are inspired by are not socialist. They just have a history of social democracy. And this is where we come to the Overton window. Very quickly explained, the Overton window describes what is acceptable in political discourse and what is not. And while social democracy is very much acceptable all over Europe and South America, democratic socialism would be very niche and inspire fear in many potential voters. And the only one who benefits from blurring of the line between democratic socialism and social democracy are far-left radicals who slowly peer into the Overton window.
This is something else too. Let me back this up too. One of the obstacles too with talking about socialism in any capacity whatsoever is that socialism is an illiberal ideology. It's illiberal, and historically this has turned into fear, right? It's given people reason to fear. For example, the reason why I bring this up, one of my students in our weekly discussion board mentioned that their grandmother is from Russia. And just talking about socialism or socialist ideologies sends her grandmother into hysterics, right? I should find a better word. Into panic, emotionally unsettled, right? Because she grew up in a time and place where just saying words in public could get you disappeared, right? And what her grandma is afraid of is socialism. But it's not, right? We understand that there's nuance there. We understand. But not grandma, and not her daughter or her grandchildren, right? These people don't have the historical background. They don't have the material analysis. They're not going to see nuance. They see socialism is illiberal, and that's an ideology that locks people up in gulags. And we can nuance this all we would like to. But the reality is that most people see things in black and white, in good and evil, and yes and no, and very strict binaries, and can't handle real nuance. Just one of the other things that I've been thinking about, and this is tying right into that idea. I don't know. That's all I had to say about that.
Socialism and social democracy are far-left radicals who slowly peer into the Overton window. To add a little footnote at the end, even as someone generally libertarian-leaning. I honestly believe that a strong social democratic party helps to stop left-wing populism, which, if left unchecked, can be extremely dangerous. I'd say the best example of this is the German Sozialdemokratische Partei, whose existence definitely helped in stability after the unification of Germany. In conclusion, Scandinavia is not socialist, don't call yourself a democratic socialist if you're a social democrat, and the US would really benefit from a multi-party system. Thanks a ton for watching this video. I do hope you've enjoyed it, and please share it with people who would benefit from watching this.
I don't know that I did. I don't know that I didn't enjoy it, but I don't know that I did. There are quite a few claims in it that I think could use some more definition, some more clarification. A lot of stuff was glossed over, I feel like. But, you know, but I'm not trying to be critical of the person who made this video to be critical of them. I'm, you know, hopefully that feedback's helpful. I don't know. And I don't know. Subtitles would help, right? Too, right? If the video had subtitles, it would have been a lot easier to understand some of this stuff. I think that I really need to watch it on a slower speed because the content creator is just speaking so fast, and it's hard for me to process complex ideas lightning speed. I'm not that bright. Okay. But good. The video's out of the way. And I think that there's more value to talking about this. Because I think that our project is a worthwhile one. The trying to figure this out. Because if we can come up with the right, we can make a map. We can make a map that can help people from where they are. That's what I want, right? We are developing a map for us to help us figure out what the fuck. And the map that we are building is hopefully something that we can take to other people. And wherever they are, whoever they are, whatever ideological holds they have in the world, whatever kinds of identities they believe are theirs, that map can help them figure out how to be revolution. That's the goal, is we are establishing a map that we use to help us figure out how to be revolution. But that map, I think, will be very helpful for other people. So people who are in the Soc Dem camp, or the Dem Soc camp, or the LM camp, or ML is what I meant to say, or whatever camp they happen to be in, right? We can bring the map to Trotskyists and have them look at the map and go, wait, that's revolution over there. This is chaos. This is destabilizing and creating vacuums. Maybe we should build power structures instead of creating chaos and power vacuums, which is what Trotskyism does, by the way. At best, right? Well, yeah, I don't know. There's probably some nuance there to be had too, but we're not going to have that nuance today. I'm going to wrap up stream and call this one a good one, because I think it was a good one. I had planned to make more changes to the document today, but I'm not really upset that I didn't. And I don't think that enough changes have really been made that it's worth it for me to repost it on the Discord. But I happily will if anybody would like. Let me find a raid target before everybody leaves. That's always the struggle, right? I start talking about leaving, and I know that people already jump as soon as I start talking about it. But that's just okay. Everybody has only so much time, right? There's only so much time in the day, and you've got to use your time as valuably as you can. And if that means hopping over to see somebody else earlier because I'm talking about leaving, then cool. I'm not even mad at you. Oh, that would be a good one. Yeah, let's hop in and see Sophie from Mars. I really rarely get to see them stream. I've been a fan of theirs for a long time, but I never really get to see them. They don't stream as much as they used to back in the day. Or it seems maybe my schedule is just not working with theirs. At any rate, they're a comrade. And let's go give some support to our comrade. Why does that keep doing that? Boy, I wish I had an explanation. That's okay. I don't need one. All right. So, as always, all of your contributions and participation is greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for spending your time with me. Thank you for helping me muddle through these concepts and ideas and to put some concreteness down to them. And not too much concreteness. We'll probably spend some more time on my next stream talking again about the dangers of positivism, right? Because that is something that we want to avoid, that haven't been focusing on nearly enough, but we'll talk. I'll refocus us on anti-positivism in our next stream. And until then, I hope you all have an excellent week,